Thank you. Oh.
All right, settle down.
I'm good. Nice to see you. Thank you for taking the time to talk about the latest Despicable Me. And I think the first question I wanted to ask you is like, out of all the sort of the animated series on the big screen, this one is kind of like the one that truly reminds me of sort of the anarchic spirit and the anything goes humor of the Looney Tunes. So I wonder if that was a constant sort of inspiration for you guys, or you by this point you're on the fourth film and you're not. You're doing your own thing in your own universe. I wanted to ask you that.
Well, I think that absolutely with when we started the first Despicable Me, that absolutely was an influence for both Pierre Coffin, my directing partner, and myself, and I think Chris Meledandri, the producer. A big part of it was, well, Pierre and I both really liked that sensibility, but it also was, it felt like something we could do back in 2008. Film came out in 2010 that nobody else was doing. And at this point, obviously people's strong positive reaction to what we've been doing, there's no reason to stop. So, so as those films are, I mean, those cartoons are still an influence, but now we've built a world that we know, how it operates. We know what the Minions do. And even though it's still challenging to find, things that are funny and fresh, and that's always true with comedy. But yeah, that initial influence is still part of the DNA of the Despicable Me and Minions world.
So were you most excited about the Mega Minions? Because obviously it's sort of you get to do a lot of things visually, and you get to make a comment on where we're at in terms of telling stories and genres. I just wonder if that whole section, it seems like you guys had a lot of fun putting that on screen.
We did. I will tell you that it was interesting and that it was actually a little bit challenging finding comedy with the Mega Minions. We had to unlock a few things, partly because there's so much superhero material out there and some of it comedic. I mean, certainly a lot of the Marvel movies have. So you're trying to find like what's your expression of that idea. And ultimately where we came to was, going through the characters of the Minions themselves, like how would a minion be a superhero? And obviously they would be bad at it. And in some cases they solve the problem without using their superpower at all, particularly towards the end of the film. So, it was a lot of fun. It gave us a moment to we were actually, there was even part of us, given some of the backlash that was happening against superhero movies, I don't know, about a year ago or half a year, we were actually even a little concerned that, would that
you rode the wave,
you
rode the wave just in time because the tide is turning again.
Yeah, we had to wait for it. Believe it, we actually had the conversation, like we knew the excitement about Deadpool Wolverine. We're like, well, we'll just wait till, we'll wait to reveal what we're doing when people get excited about that. So yeah, it's with animation, it takes so long to make the movie. Sometimes when you want to make a comment, the moment could have passed. You know what I mean? So, but I think fortunately it sort of landed at the right time. So
no, most definitely timing was good for you guys on that sense. And the other thing is, I wonder if you think about, because we're talking now like I'm definitely Gen X, so I get all of the references that are in there. But I wonder with something like the supermarket sequence, the references to the Robert Patrick run, it's those layers of stuff that some people might get and not people might get. How deep do you go in those wormholes when you're making a creative sequence like that? And you think about the levels of storytelling? If you could guide me through that.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think something like the Terminator reference is pretty omnipresent. So I think probably even kids will get that to some degree. I remember in the first Despicable Me, there's a joke that's a Godfather reference when Gru wakes up. I don't know if you even remember. Gru wakes up. Now that joke I knew, that joke was my idea. I knew a lot of people weren't going to get that. Like kids especially. So, but I think that's okay. And even though that joke was never like a huge laugh, I think that it operated on enough of a laugh level that it earned its place. You know what I mean? So sometimes, you make those decisions too, where you're like, oh, well, let's just keep it in for ourselves and it'll find traction, later. So yeah, you kind of like think about like how those references work, who gets them and who doesn't. And sometimes it's okay if not everybody in the audience understands exactly what you're doing. because of very often what'll happen is it'll come out later, and then on a subsequent viewing, somebody will be like, "Oh, now I see that." You know what I mean? And that's okay, because not, even beyond cultural references, there's so much great background animation with the Minions. We really try to
Hmm.
craft the frame that there's multiple levels of getting it, I suppose. So not even just the jokes themselves, but sort of things that are happening,
Yeah,
off to the edge of the
yeah,
film or in the
and the
background.
Easter eggs. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you this, because I'm a father of 18-year-old twin boys who are off to college, so I'm dealing with my own sort of trauma. So the whole baby rejecting Gru was very funny to me. So I wonder, is that included in the story because it works for Gru, or are any of the fathers in the production like channeling their trauma also as well? So I'm just gonna have that question for you.
I think a little of both, really. I mean,
Mm.
it's such a universal concept that, holding a baby that doesn't like you and you take it personally, even though it's the baby, is, and listen, in this case, we played it with a dad. I'm sure it happens to moms too. But I think it's just such a universal idea that, everyone immediately gets it. Um, and what was good about it too is it gave us a place to go, because actually we went back and forth. We played an idea where the baby liked Gru right off the bat and like kind of wanted to imitate him, but there was no. I'm sorry to say, but the source of comedy is conflict, and
Yep.
so if the baby liked Gru, it just didn't give us anywhere to take the relationship. And so, as we were developing it, this idea that the baby starts to bond to Gru when he sees his dad being a villain, actually, if he sees his dad being bad, felt like a fun idea, because we always thought of the baby as maybe that's how Gru was when he was that age. Even
Ah,
though Gru is mellowed and he's a dad now, we could imagine that he was mischievous and maybe not the easiest to get along with when he was young. So anyway, so those different ideas, created help us create the relationship between the baby and Gru, and as I said, gave us a place to go towards the end as we resolved that idea.
all right. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much. You guys have a good day.